So, continuing our series on Rebbe Nachman's Outpouring of the Soul. Tonight we have chapter 21, which is the shortest chapter in the entire collection. It consists of just 2 sentences. The chapter is called The Joy of Contrition. It's a very old-fashioned sounding religious word, which we'll talk a little bit about. It says, after true contrition comes joy. A sign of true contrition is one is later truly happy. Now, we interpret this on 3 different levels: the immediate level, the short-term level, and the long-term level, and it has relevance for all 3. By contrition, the 18th century Rebbes meant a feeling of repentance, or the acknowledgement of wrongs, the acknowledgement of mistakes, the acknowledgement of selfishness, the acknowledgement of anger, even things that we don't normally think of as missteps, things like worry and fear. So when he says after true contrition comes joy, what he means is having turned to face these aspects of our behavior, of our thought, of our character that have gone astray, the effect of that is not at all what we would expect, that we would be disconsolate or depressed or defeated. It's actually that we experience joy instead. First of all, the immediate level. Again, making reference to 12-step literature. The 10th step says, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This is the instant level of transforming difficulties and mistakes into joy. What this means is that we watch ourselves throughout the day, throughout all of our behavior, and we remain open to the fact that we are human, and that we take missteps, and that we make mistakes, that we say unkind words, that we respond with suspicion or anger or impatience. We cut somebody off in traffic to get ahead. We are short with somebody on the phone. It could be anything. When we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. Sometimes we admit it to the other person. Sometimes we only admit it to ourselves. Sometimes we feel the need to admit it to our higher power, or God, or Buddha, or whatever. That power beyond self, that ear of the cosmos that listens when we think and when we speak. I'll tell a brief story about what I'm talking about here, and it also has a bearing on what Rebbe Nachman is saying as well. In the early part of this century, there was in Japan a grandmother whose daughter had died, leaving her with a grandson to care for. She had very little money, and she had big dreams for him. She always hoped that he would go to university, but he'd have to go on a complete scholarship. He was very, very smart, and she had no idea really how she might get him to Tokyo Imperial University, which is sort of like the Harvard of Japan. And so the only person in the town that she knew of who could, give him the kind of education that at that time would be required to get into such a prestigious university was a very well-known but very old calligraphy teacher, calligrapher. Okay, a person who had studied the Chinese classics and who had studied the art of Japanese and Chinese style ink script. And so she sent the young boy to be tutored by him, and the calligrapher tutored him for some years. And then came the moment of truth when she would ask if the calligrapher would write a recommendation for this young man. Because the calligraphy teacher knew the president of Tokyo University. And in fact, the president had once been his student. And so she went to the calligraphy teacher and bowed and presented a gift of incense or whatever it was she did to pay her respects. And he said, I will certainly write this young man a letter of recommendation. So he took out an ordinary piece of correspondence paper. You know, it's like something you take out of your printer. Okay, not vellum, nothing with a letterhead on it, nothing like that. Just a plain sheet of paper. And he took an old, like, carpenter's pencil. You've seen those carpenter's pencils, big flat ones the carpenters use. The only purpose is really just to make a line on a board so they can saw it. Right? He took one of those pencils, and it was very dull and had been used a lot. Who knows what for? It just happened to be there on his desk. So he took his penknife and he just pulled away a couple of very small shavings just to expose the lead a little bit more. And then he wrote a single character on the piece of paper, and he folded it in thirds, no envelope even, and handed it to the old woman. So anyway, she contacted with great trepidation, contacted the president of Tokyo University, and the man heard who had sent her and said, "I will certainly agree to meet with anyone sent me by the master." So she goes on the long trip with her grandson. She gets there. They go into the office, and she fearfully presents him with this single sheet of paper, feeling tremendous embarrassment and trepidation, and prepared for his scorn and his laughter. Instead, he opens it up and he looks at it for a very, very long time. And he said, only he could have created such a masterpiece. He says, with a pencil, no less. So he says, I will certainly accept anyone recommended by this man. And, he went to Tokyo University on a full scholarship. Now, that's only the preamble to the real story, as you can imagine. This is just the introduction. Because the woman, the grandmother, is a very, very clinging, grasping person, a very anxious person whose whole life has been spent in worry and blocking the graces that life offers, right? Wanting many things, and experiencing not getting them. Complaining a lot, very bitter, a lot of resentments. So she's traveling back on the train back home on the train, and she's thinking to herself over and over again, he just took this crappy little pencil and he just exposed a little lead, and he just put a scribble on the piece of paper. But the president of Tokyo University called it a masterpiece. How can that be? How can that be? So she thought about it over and over and over again. So this went on for some time. Now, before this, in her village, people had avoided her because she was resentful and complained all the time. She had no friends. But gradually, as time passed, more and more people started to show up at her house. And they would come for tea, they would come for dinner. People would come by and volunteer to rake her yard. People would offer to take her laundry and return it, and to walk with her to the store as she got older. And finally, a neighbor sat down with her one day and said, we're all wondering what happened to you, because we always avoided you. We never wanted to spend any time with you. But then something changed, and we saw the change happen. What was it? And she told the story. And she said, I kept thinking about the pencil. What was it? What was it? And then she said, oh, it's me. And just by whittling away the tiniest bit of selfishness and self-importance, the Buddha can make a masterpiece. That's really what Rebbe Nachman is talking about when he says, after true contrition comes joy. A sign of true contrition is when one is later truly happy.